June 12th, 1962, 7:15 in the morning. A guard walks the tiers of America's most escape-proof prison. In cell 138, a prisoner is still in bed. Nobody sleeps through the morning count at Alcatraz. The guard calls his name. Nothing. He reaches through the bars and slaps the pillow. The head rolls off the bed and shatters on the concrete floor. It is not a man. It is a dummy head. Painted skin. Real human hair. 2 cells away, another head, then a third. 3 men are gone from an island no one had ever escaped. What follows is the greatest prison escape in American history, and nobody knows how it ends. Alcatraz sits on a bare rock in the middle of San Francisco Bay, 1.25 miles from shore. The water around it rarely climbs above 54 degrees, cold enough to kill a swimmer within the hour. The currents are worse. They tear through the bay, dragging anything loose out toward the open Pacific. This is where America sent the men no other prison could hold. Al Capone, Machine Gun Kelly, Alvin Karpis, the worst of the worst, locked on the rock. 1 guard for every 3 prisoners, 12 head counts a day, gun galleries, steel doors, watchtowers. The cells measured 5 feet by 9, a cot, a sink, a toilet, and a lifetime to think. On quiet nights, the wind carried something crueler than any punishment, music and laughter from San Francisco. Freedom was close enough to hear. That was the point of Alcatraz. Before 1962, 36 men had tried to escape the island in 14 separate attempts. Every single one was recaptured, shot dead, or swallowed by the freezing bay. Officials called it escape-proof. For 29 years, they were right. But by 1961, the fortress was hiding a secret. It was falling apart. Decades of salt air had eaten into the concrete. Pipes leaked. Walls crumbled behind fresh paint. One prisoner ran his fingers along the air vent below his sink and felt the cement give way. His name was Frank Lee Morris, abandoned at 11, convicted of his first crime at 13. Prison tests put his IQ at 133, smarter than 98% of the population. He had already broken out of Louisiana State Penitentiary and stayed free for almost a year. When the law caught him again, they sent him to the one place built for men like him. Frank Morris arrived at Alcatraz in January 1960, inmate number AZ-1. Fate gave him neighbors, John and Clarence Anglin, bank-robbing brothers from a poor Georgia farming family. As boys, the Anglins swam Lake Michigan in freezing water. Sometimes, the story goes, among floating ice. They robbed a bank in Alabama and then tried to break out of every prison that held them. So the system sent them to the Rock as well, into cells on the same block as Morris. The 3 men already knew each other from the federal penitentiary in Atlanta. Old acquaintances reunited. A 4th inmate completed the circle, Alan West, a car thief in a neighboring cell. In late 1961, West came across old saw blades abandoned in a utility corridor he was assigned to clean. 4 men, 4 adjacent cells, one impossible idea. The plan was born. At the back of every cell, below the sink, sat a small ventilation grill. Around it, the concrete was soft, rotted by 30 years of salt, moisture, and neglect. Their first tools were spoons, stolen from the dining hall and sharpened into crude chisels. Morris improved them. He bound spoon handles together and built a drill from a broken vacuum cleaner motor. Every night after lights out, the 4 men scraped at their walls, inch by inch, week after week. They worked in pairs. One man dug, while his neighbor watched the corridor for guards. The prison's music hour became their cover. Morris played his accordion while the concrete quietly fell. Each morning they hid the growing holes behind false grills of painted cardboard. Guards walked past the fake vents every single day. Nobody ever looked closer. Behind the cells ran a hidden utility corridor, a dark canyon of pipes and cables, 3 feet wide. Widening the holes took the better part of a year. By May 1962, a man could slip through. From there, they climbed the pipes, 30 feet up, to the top of the cell block. Above the tiers, they found a forgotten space the guards almost never visited. They turned it into a secret workshop, hidden in the ceiling of a maximum security prison. Now they needed a way across 1.25 miles of freezing, violent water. The answer came from the prison library, in the pages of a magazine. Popular Mechanics, articles on rafts, life preservers, and the vulcanizing of rubber. Piece by piece, the men gathered more than 50 rubber raincoats, borrowed, stolen, hoarded. In the workshop, they glued the coats into a raft, 6 feet by 14, sealing the seams with heat. They stitched life vests, carved wooden paddles, and modified a concertina into a bellows to inflate it all. But the crossing would take hours, and the guards counted the sleeping men all through the night. They needed to buy time. The solution became the most famous trick in prison history. Using soap, toilet paper, and concrete dust, they sculpted lifelike human heads. They painted them with flesh tones smuggled from the maintenance shop, one careful layer at a time. Then the final touch, real human hair, swept from the floor of the prison barber shop. In the dark, tucked under a blanket, the dummies were indistinguishable from sleeping men. The guards would walk by all night, counting prisoners who were no longer there. By June 1962, everything was ready. The raft, the vests, the heads, the route. Then came bad news. Maintenance crews had started working above the block. The workshop could be found any day. The window was closing. They set the date, the night of June 11th, 1962. Lights out. The cell house falls silent, except for the foghorns moaning out on the bay. Morris places the dummy head on his pillow and tucks the blanket up to its painted chin. He lifts away the false grill and slides into the blackness behind his cell. The Anglin brothers are already in the corridor, moving without a sound between the pipes. But in cell 140, Alan West is in trouble. Weeks earlier, he had cemented his crumbling grill back in place to avoid suspicion. Now, it will not move. He claws at the hardened edges in the dark, while the other 3 climb toward the roof. At the top of the block, Morris and the Anglins wait as long as they dare. West never comes. They leave him behind. They force the rooftop ventilator open. The steel cover falls with a clang that rolls through the prison. Somewhere below, a guard hears the noise, pauses, and writes nothing down. The count continues, all present. 3 shadows cross 100 feet of open rooftop, crouching each time the lighthouse beam sweeps past. They slide 50 feet down a kitchen vent pipe, palms burning against the cold metal. 2 12-foot fences crowned with barbed wire stand between them and the water. They climb both, drop onto the rocks of the northeast shore, and vanish beyond the reach of the searchlights. There in the dark, wave by wave, they inflate the raft with the little concertina. Sometime after 10 o'clock, 3 men push off into the black water of San Francisco Bay. By the time Alan West finally breaks through his wall and reaches the roof, the shore below is empty. He climbs back down into his cell, lies on his bunk, and waits for morning. Behind them, Alcatraz sleeps on, every guard, every count, deceived by 3 painted heads. When the head hits the floor, the escape siren tears across the island for the first time in years. Within hours, the FBI, the Coast Guard, and the military are scouring every inch of the bay. Boats sweep the currents. Helicopters circle Angel Island. Soldiers walk the shorelines of Marin. Inside the prison, Alan West talks. He gives investigators every detail of the plan he helped build. He tells them the destination, Angel Island first, then the mainland, then a stolen car, and gone. So the FBI waits for the clues that always come. Stolen cars, robbed stores, sightings, nothing comes. Then piece by piece, the bay begins to give up fragments. June 14th, a wooden paddle found floating off Angel Island. The same week, a wallet wrapped in rubber. Inside, names, addresses, and photos of the Anglin's family. Days later, a shredded life vest washes up near the Golden Gate, its valve marked by human teeth. And 1 month after the escape, a Norwegian freighter radios in something chilling. 20 miles past the Golden Gate, the crew has seen a body floating face down, dressed in denim. The clothing matches prison issue. The body is never recovered, never identified. For the FBI, the pieces form a simple picture. The raft came apart, and the bay did the rest. But investigators knew something uncomfortable. No raft was ever found. No bodies ever surfaced in the bay. Skeptics point to the tides. That night, a powerful ebb was draining the bay towards the open ocean. Believers answer with a question. Men who planned everything for a year, forgetting to check the tides. No remains, no proof of death, nothing but fragments and a story with no ending. 9 months later, Alcatraz itself surrendered. The prison closed forever in March 1963. On the last day of 1979, after 17 years, the FBI closed its case. Official conclusion: presumed drowned. The United States Marshals refused to close theirs. Their file remains open to this day. Because for more than 60 years, this case has refused to stay quiet. Over the decades, thousands of tips poured in. Sightings in Mexico, in South America, on American farms. The Anglin's family says Christmas cards arrived for 3 years after the escape, signed in the brothers' handwriting. At their mother's funeral in 1973, relatives swore 2 strangers stood at the back, tall women in heavy makeup. In 2003, television engineers built an identical raincoat raft and rode the same currents to shore, alive. In 2015, the Anglin's nephews revealed a photograph. Brazil, they said. 1975. 2 middle-aged men by a country road. A forensic analyst concluded it was more than likely them. And then came the letter. In 2013, San Francisco police received an envelope from a man claiming to be a ghost. "My name is John Anglin," it read. "I escaped from Alcatraz in June 1962. Yes, we all made it that night." The writer claimed Frank Morris died in 2008, and his brother Clarence in 2011. He said he was 83 and dying of cancer. He offered to surrender in exchange for medical care. The FBI examined the handwriting, the fingerprints, the DNA traces. The official result: inconclusive. Not confirmed, not disproved. Like every other clue in this case, it leads exactly nowhere and everywhere. Meanwhile, the Marshals keep updating their wanted posters, age progressing 3 faces deep into their 90s. Officially, no prisoner has ever escaped from Alcatraz. Officially, Frank Morris and the Anglin brothers drowned in the bay on the night of June 11th, 1962. But in 64 years, nobody has ever found them, alive or dead. Somewhere, perhaps, 3 men beat the most secure prison ever built and simply chose to disappear. The water is still cold, the currents still run, and the case, officially, is still open. Escape-proof, that is what they called it. 3 painted heads say otherwise. If stories like this keep you up at night, subscribe. A new mystery is already waiting in the dark.